Treating Jesus like a therapist is wrong about how he heals, and the overemphasis on this is contributing to a slow motion crisis in the church. How's that for an intro? So in my last video, I questioned whether we were talking about Jesus too much and not talking enough about every other part of our religion up to and including God the Father. And I mentioned very briefly then that a lot of the problem with Jesus is this overemphasis on this therapy Jesus, teaching aimed at people who are having some sort of mental health struggle, treating Jesus like somewhere between a therapist and an emotional security blanket, and constant reminders that he is still there when you're sad. And there is definitely too much of this stuff in the church right now. It's every song in the new hymn book, it's every piece of art at Deseret Book, it's every general conference talk with a few very good exceptions. And it makes sense why this kind of thing has suddenly become so popular. The rate of mental health problems has skyrocketed recently. I mean, this is literally what it looks like. While mental health has always been something that exists, it's definitely true that it's way worse than it was before. And this includes me. Which means, before I can get into how this has anything to do with religion, I, for the second week in a row, have to engage in some story time. This is something I need to be careful with. It may surprise you to know that behind this handsome, pixelated, anonymous face is a real human being. No, I'm not a robot. I'm a real human being who struggles with anxiety. And I don't know if this experience was anything like what you guys experienced, but when I was a wee lad, I was told this story that my anxiety existed because my brain was jumping at shadows. My brain was built to survive on the prehistoric mammoth steppe where I had to fight a saber-toothed cave hyena just to survive in the morning. And now that I live in an environment without hyenas, my brain is still looking for threats and glomming onto whatever it can find, and that's why I'm having panic attacks, so I was told. And I think this story was wrong. I think that this jump in mental health problems is due to something real. I don't just mean that the problems are real or that the people are experiencing real trouble. Obviously, that's true. I mean that we weren't jumping at shadows. We're reacting to something just as real as a hyena to a caveman. It's interesting once you take a close look how this graph matches up to a whole bunch of other graphs that tell you how crap modern life is for most people. Really, the default life for most people these days is pretty terrible, and if the unaliving rate has anything to say about it, maybe just as dangerous as the hyena on the long run. Except unlike the hyena, you can't fight it off or run away from it, it's just there all the time. Which means the things that we consider mental illness, this feeling of helplessness, uncontrollable fear, uncontrollable sadness, is just the rational response to the conditions of life in the modern world. Now, I was supposed to be talking about religion in this video, wasn't I? So let me get back to it. Because when I say world, I mean world. This big increase in mental health problems is not something that would happen in Zion. Not something that would happen in a society of God's peculiar people living according to his law. Which is to say, the fact that we even feel such a need to preach therapy Jesus in the first place is indicative of a bigger problem. That our communities have the same problems that the world does. We are no longer a separate people. Now, if you want to throw a tomato at me right about now, please wait 30 seconds for me to say the things I'm not saying. I'm not saying that Jesus doesn't care about your mental health struggles, that he can't or won't help you. And I'm not saying the church should never talk about this kind of stuff. There is a place for it. I'm also not saying that your mental health struggles exist because you are or were living too worldly of a life, or that you can just go to church harder to get rid of them, or that you're a bad Christian for having them. I don't think any of these things are true because I think this problem is bigger than me or you as individuals. This is a collective problem. We as a people are too worldly. We as a people are getting worldly results, and you and I are just caught in the churn. Okay there, if you still want to throw tomatoes at me, please let me know in the comment section. Anyway, I think therapy Jesus is fundamentally wrong about how the Savior heals, because the Savior has a different mode of healing than the healing offered by the secular mental health cartel. We can see from any number of miracles that Jesus performed how he removes the problems that the people have been struggling with through their faith. Now, I'm not saying that this is going to happen to all of us. I certainly don't have the ability to repair your legs by touching you or whatever. But fundamentally, the Savior's healing is about making progress. It's about overcoming. On the other hand, the healing the world offers, it's a philosophy of stagnation. Stagnation versus progress. Where have I heard that one before? The world has no choice but to offer a philosophy of stagnation because they're incapable of considering the conditions of modernity that have given rise to this mental health crisis. They can only treat the symptoms. They can only try and gimmick your brain to be better at handling conditions that are frankly horrifying. And unfortunately, I think Therapy Jesus is almost doing the same thing. It's treating a symptom, the rise of mental health challenges among members of the church and the necessity of those people to be ministered to, and it's ignoring the cause, that we as a church are no longer a particular people, that we can't stop the world's problems from getting into our own heads. And by overemphasizing Therapy Jesus, we are depriving ourselves of the capacity to solve the real problem. Because talking about the weird stuff is how we become Zion again. Now, it's not because there's any particular magic power in talking about this stuff, but rather because it lets us get on the same page. The danger of talking about only one thing all the time, even a good thing, is that that's the only area in which we as a people are on the same page. Right now, the only thing we can all agree on is that Jesus can help us when we're sad, and as much as it's nice to be agreed, I don't think it's very useful at solving our problems. The more pages we could get together on, the more capability we would have to take practical action to protect our communities from the world's influence, such that next time a mental health epidemic or any other worldly problem came knocking on our doorsteps, we could run it out of town on a rail as a people, rather than letting the world's dysfunction in and dealing with the consequences as isolated individuals. Anyway, you might have an objection to this because I'm basically saying that the way we solve our problems is through superior social organizing, that we all join hands to make a fist. And you might say that's not how you solve problems. You solve problems with Jesus. So stop trying to de-emphasize him, Saint Explainer. And you know what? I agree with you. But I think these things are actually the same in practice. You can read in the book of Jeremiah to find out what happens when people think they deserve the Lord's protection because they're his people without acting like his people. You can actually read about this in Mormon also, so if there's any non-members still listening, don't let anyone tell you the Bible and Book of Mormon are in contradiction. In the end, I don't care whether we get there through social organization or divine intervention or both. I just want to live in a world where we don't have to worry about this kind of stuff anymore, where we're our own people again. And if we can do that, then everything I said about talking about Jesus too much, I take it back. Talk about him as much as you like, because it won't be a problem anymore. We won't be using limp-wristed appeals to Jesus' love and care for us as a band-aid to hide from the consequences of the fact that we lost control over our own communities and can't stop the world from hurting our children anymore. And we would be talking about him as the Savior, Lord, and yes, healer that he is, as the people that he wants us to be. A peculiar people that don't have to worry about the world's problems anymore. We don't have to worry about this graph, or that one, or that one, or that one, or that one. Have a good week. See you next time.